The case of the easy-to-get vaccine appointments gets stranger. People have been showing up at the address with all the appointments to find it's a P.O. box. One-on-one with the governor, asking who's been held accountable for failures in the unemployment system and why the state won't just build a website where everyone can sign up for COVID vaccine. You have been following the COVID guidance, which means you stayed home for Thanksgiving, he flew, now he skates. Then, about this business with wind turbines. A key politician in Colorado is blaming them for a power issue here last weekend. Simple question. It's true. Tilting at windmills. Next.
The state health department's warning people to hold off on making any vaccine appointments with a company that claims that it has a ton of them available. We told you last night how VitaCare claimed to have all kinds of open slots in Colorado, but yet the company had not been approved to provide the vaccine. When our Steve Steger went to check out their clinic locations, the addresses, well, things got even stranger. Took Steve to a P.O. box in Denver and now out to Fort Morgan tonight. Howdy, Steve.
Well, howdy, Kyle. Yeah, we're across the street from one of those advertised locations of vaccine clinics here in Fort Morgan. Now, the state health department told me today that they reached out to VitaCare and told them to stop scheduling appointments and that they haven't heard back from VitaCare since Tuesday. Our story from today might give you an idea why. Our day started at 201 Steel Street in Cherry Creek, one of 3 locations of advertised clinics. Walking around, we couldn't find any sign of VitaCare, but we did find the man who owns the building.
To the best of my knowledge, they don't have space. They have never leased from us.
The other clinic, located near Evans and Monaco, actually has VitaCare's name on it. It advertises rapid testing, even has a display of COVID products for sale, including a cleaning solution. Google lists VitaCare's office address as 700 Colorado Boulevard. It's a UPS store. The suite number corresponds to a box inside. When we asked about it, the UPS store representative couldn't tell us who owned it. But a few minutes later, she came out on the phone with someone telling us to go to Fort Morgan. There would be people there, she said, and they could get us facts. That led us here to a clinic in Fort Morgan and a conversation with someone who'd prefer we'd not speak on camera. She said they're planning a drive-up clinic at Evans and Monaco, where they're renovating some new office space. She said there's a plan for a drive-up clinic here in Fort Morgan, too. And all of this is slated to happen next week. She said the corporate legal team would respond to my request, and now we're here. So we did get a statement tonight. I want to read through some of these things that we've heard from the company. They said, we are working closely with the state and will adhere to state guidelines. We are looking forward to the finalization of their approval. They say that they did not advertise these signups to begin with, that it was an internal error that this link got out. They say it got spread around like wildfire. The sign-up sheet will now go offline, and they tell me, Kyle, that they will contact everyone who has an appointment and tell them how to proceed moving forward.
Working closely with the state, as in not answering their phone calls for days. I gotta say, Steve, we knew that people were going to jump on this because the appointments were right there and there were so many of them. I didn't expect the whole thing to unravel the moment that you pulled at the thread.
Well, and it's interesting. At each of these locations, you go and you talk to people around the area. Like take the UPS store, for example. We went upstairs, we talked to a receptionist upstairs at a different business who says, we've had seniors showing up here asking, is this where I go to get signed up for the vaccine? Same thing at that building in Cherry Creek. The owner told me that he's had at least one person show up at his office saying, where's VitaCare?
That is absolutely heartbreaking, and I think that your reporting is probably going to save a lot more people similar frustration. Really good work. Thank you, Steve. Just under 742,000 people in Colorado have gotten the first dose of the vaccine, which you cannot get at a P.O. box. You have to get it from a provider. 12.6% of the population. 321,000 of those people are fully immunized, 5.6% of the population. And listen, all of that is good news for all of us, You and me floating out there in the unvaccinated blue yonder, because every shot delivered protects all of us. We're going to watch hospitalization numbers closely for the next couple of days because they took a jump up. 34 more patients than the day before, 440 total. No reason to overreact based on one day, so we'll just keep an eye on it. The unemployment fiasco that so many Coloradans are facing has got to be one of the biggest issues before the state government today. It did not get one mention in Democratic Governor Jared Polis' State of the State address today. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger, I take this to mean that the unemployment system has been fixed.
Well, the governor wouldn't tell me directly if he considered it a significant success, like the deputy director of unemployment said last week. He told me the unemployment system was a problem that existed before he was even elected, outdated technology that needed upgrading, and that the upgrade was necessary because otherwise the state would be delayed inputting changes Congress needs to make the federal unemployment benefits better for Colorado.
Those will be able to be entered into the system in a much more rapid fashion to make sure the benefits get out quickly. But I also want to make clear, nobody will lose any benefits that they've earned. They will all get the full amount that they deserve.
And you mentioned that last week to the Colorado Municipal League, and I got response that seemed tone deaf.
Yeah.
Who's been held accountable for the failures with the unemployment system?
Well, first of all, I acknowledge that part too. I said that's little consolation to people that knowing that they will get everything they're owed, but they're going to get it 3 or 4 weeks late, because what do you do during those 3 or 4 weeks when rent is due? It's very, very difficult. So it's not in any way belittling that. This is a large rebuild of the system that came at an inopportune time, in the sense that there's no opportune time for something like this, but to deploy it, the new system in the middle of the crisis, at least for going forward, we'll have a functional system where new changes can be implemented rapidly and checks can go out quickly.
So it's technical, not administrative. Nobody needs to be punished for this. It's all technical glitches?
It's not a glitch, it's a transition from one system to the other. When you migrate systems, it's always a difficult transition for a few weeks. It would have been worse to delay the transition, because then we would be delayed with a new round of checks that will need to go out in March.
Technical glitches is having 2 microphones plugged in at once. We also talked about vaccine hunters, people like Nick from yesterday, who created a one-stop shop website to find vaccine appointments at multiple pharmacies. This site scrapes data from the pharmacy sites and streamlines it in one place.
Could the state create a scrape-like website?
The state could, but I think that the procurement laws of the state would probably mean it would take months and millions of dollars. So it's much better that volunteers stepped up and got it done. It's very simple technology.
I also asked the governor if the state can punish a pharmacy for vaccinating someone not yet eligible based on the phase we're in Colorado. Why not require pharmacies to prioritize those 70 and older who have not yet been vaccinated, since they're now competing with 65 to 69-year-olds, teachers, child care workers, a bigger pool of people. Ultimately, he told me what we've heard from him before, Kyle, that the state wants vaccines going into arms. Quote, "We would rather have frustrated people who wait a week or two than not enough people to take every available vaccine every day that we run a clinic."
Baffling to hear the governor say that the state doesn't want to create a website because the government's too cumbersome. He's glad a volunteer did it. Would have been great if 6 months ago they said vaccines are coming. We're not going to create a website. Hey, anybody want to volunteer and do it for us?
I'm torn because I don't know enough of the governor's past with technology, but I know he comes from this realm where if he was in the outside, not political world, he might be the one or knows someone who could create it. And he is right that if the government got involved, it would take months and probably millions of dollars, but it could also take a day, perhaps. I don't know.
And again, some notice that this was going to be an all-volunteer effort would have been super 6 months ago, because there are a ton of smart people in Colorado who probably could have figured this out. All right. Well, Mike Marshall, thank you. Hey, this could be the week that your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign hits the $3 million mark, which that's an astonishing amount of money for some group of people to raise together in 8 months, just $5 at a time. All right, so this week, let's work together to make a positive impact on one of Colorado's most persistent and most talked about challenges in the last year. Let's give a boost this week to Urban Peak, which has a 30-year track record of helping young people who are experiencing homelessness in Denver. The teenagers and young adults who have turned to Urban Peak for help overcoming homelessness have ended up needing that help for a variety of different reasons. But Urban Peak knows how to meet them where they are with experienced, specialized support to help them with their specific challenges and ultimately to get them into safe housing. Urban Peak is the nonprofit that's been doing this work in Denver since the late 80s. They've got an overnight shelter, place for young people to come during the day to escape the streets, job training, education resources, and then that ultimate focus on getting youth into housing where they can be safe and self-sufficient. If you text the word thanks to 303-871-1491, I'll send you that link to donate. As always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 tonight. Quick story. The head of Urban Peak was telling me how when they finally get a young person a new place to live, and even with 2020's challenges, they did that for 60-plus young people last year. When that happens, they try to scrape together the basics, like a bed, a chair, a table, cooking utensils. She said that she'd really love to let each young person they work with buy one small thing of their choice so that their home feels like their home. I'll kick in a few dollars for that. Hope you might too.
Misinformation about the Texas power outage is sweeping America. It's even seeping into politicians' response here to a power issue in Colorado last week.
All of the lofty goals of having 100% renewable energy were not sufficient.
Let's look at the truth of what happened in Texas and in Colorado. Speaking of power, the Denver Ethics Board doesn't have a ton. Would it use what little it has to hold Mayor Hancock accountable for what he did over Thanksgiving? That's next.
The winter storm and the extreme cold that caused the power grid failure down in Texas also strained power supplies in parts of northern Colorado. Elected Republicans in both states have now made the false claim that green energy is to blame.
The Green New Deal came to Texas. The power grid in the state became totally reliant on windmills.
That's not true. Wind energy is 25% of the mix in Texas this time of year. The majority of the failures came from other power sources. Colorado's Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert echoed Fox News' false claim, inexplicably claiming that the Green New Deal, a proposal by some Democrats which is not the law anywhere, is what was to blame.
Just 2 nights ago, many of us in northern Colorado received a disturbing and alarming message.
Republican House Minority Leader Hugh McKean of Loveland also misleadingly blamed green energy for the call by Platte River Power Authority for northern Colorado customers to conserve their usage over the cold weekend.
The extreme cold was pitting a high demand for electricity against low production after several days when the sun couldn't break through the clouds and there was little wind. This caused a shortage of natural gas used to produce power when renewable sources could not meet demand.
Minority Leader McKean's claim makes it sound like Platte River Power Authority was hamstrung by an over-reliance on renewable sources. Platte River Power Authority says it was only expecting 8 to 10% of its output to come from wind and solar over the weekend. Most of it was coming from coal, hydropower, and purchases from connected utilities on the grid. It's true wind and solar were hampered by the cold weather and they were producing at a lower level, but that was a single-digit fraction of the utility's problem. The bulk of the issue was that Platte River Power Authority was not able to kick on its far larger natural gas generating capacity. There were supply issues up and down the Plains states. Platte River says that customers responded to the Sunday conservation plea with a 10% reduction in use, and that allowed them to meet demand. The situation in northern Colorado over the weekend also points to the value that Colorado derives from being connected to other states on a multi-state power grid. It allows for easier purchasing of excess capacity when needed. Texas, as you probably have heard by now, operates on kind of a power grid island, gives it greater control, but less ability to deal with a widespread emergency.
Mayor Hancock was facing a slap on the wrist for his hypocritical trip out of town after telling you to stay put. Not even that will happen. That's not a surprise. But this is, and this, and this, the most Colorado things we exploded today. Next.
Denver Mayor Michael Hancock will not face consequences from Denver's Ethics Board for his admittedly hypocritical decision to tell people to stay home for Thanksgiving like minutes before he boarded a flight out of state to see family. Now, the Ethics Board could only give him a scolding, but after 5 minutes of public discussion at their meeting today, they decided that Mayor Hancock's actions were troubling, in their words, but not an ethics violation. You can imagine that that went over poorly with the constituent who filed the complaint.
I would ask for all in favor to say aye.
Before you vote, I would like to speak. This is my complaint, as you know. I responded
Ms. Wilson, I'm sorry, but the board has a significant amount of business on the agenda, and we do not have a question. We do not, Ms. Wilson, the board has a significant amount of work on the agenda, and we do not have a question and answer session scheduled on the agenda for today. We again thank you very much for your diligence and your concern in this, because as we said, it's a very troubling allegation, but it is not one that violates. It is not one that violates the code of ethics as it stands.
I disagree.
A reminder, Mayor Hancock only got caught because somebody who saw him leaving town right after he told the rest of us not to travel due to COVID restrictions did not like that and gave a heads up to our Marshall Zellinger. Great reminder. If you see any public officials doing stuff they shouldn't, tell Marshall.
After another cloudy, gray day, light snow is falling in the Denver metro area. Temperatures today well below the average of 46, and they'll go even colder tonight. This storm bringing snow to the high country will bring about 1 to 3 inches of snow to Denver. All that cold air that's diving south is beginning to shift east, so we're heading into the weekend with a nice warming trend. But the snow showers tonight will make for a slick morning drive. I-25 and I-70 will be affected, even without winter weather or travel advisories in effect. Here are the accumulation amounts: 1 to 3 for Denver overnight, slightly heavier amounts to the north and west. Cloudy and chilly with our low at 13. Snow ends by 5 o'clock in the morning. Clearing skies and a high of 32. We get into Friday and Saturday with highs in the 40s and 50s in the forecast for the first few days of next week.
The most Colorado thing we saw today is stuff exploding in the extreme cold. Pepsi, frozen, boom, in the back of Lauren's car in Fort Collins. She left the 12-pack of soda there overnight, and it went pop. Sparkling water, frozen, boom, inside Jamie's car up in Meade, the car that she now says smells like lime and grape. Milk, frozen, boom, at the delivery box out front of Christine's house. Milk was a bad choice. Young Coloradans all deserve a safe place to sleep at night and the opportunity to grow and succeed. We had the chance to help make that happen. Next. There are young people just starting out in life. Their teenage years, their early 20s, and through one circumstance or another, they've ended up on Denver streets. Urban Peak is the nonprofit that has been helping young people experiencing homelessness for decades now. And together tonight, we've got a chance to help support their work through Word of Thanks. Text word thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll send you that link to join me and a bunch of Next viewers in sending a few dollars their way for that important work. Here's the deal. Urban Peak gets young people out of dangerous situations and into housing where they can be safe, they can be self-sufficient as they get started in life. They have their whole lives ahead of them, and our support can help Urban Peak reach more people. Bill and Barbara write in tonight with thanks that we are featuring Urban Peak, saying we give to them through meal preparation events and financially. He says it's a wonderful charity for homeless kids. Urban Peak was one of the most frequently heard suggestions that we've received from you since starting Word of Thanks. They've been around for a long time doing great work, so I'm glad that we were able to feature them this week. Regarding the frozen and exploded soda, sparkling water, and milk, Larry Zogren notes that vodka doesn't have that problem. Yes, Larry, vodka has and creates a lot of problems, but that's not one.